Hey everyone, this is Carroll Moon with KidFit. Thank you for joining us today. I was lucky enough to interview Rebekah Trittipoe, who has had a fantastic career as an ultra marathon runner and ultra distance runner all over the world. She's written a number of books and is currently the women's chaplain at Fellowship of Christian Athletes for Liberty University. I was lucky enough to interview her in person, so we'll get to that in just a second. I would like to take a second to tell you about KidFit. If you don't know about us, our mission is to provide mentoring and opportunities for kids of all backgrounds, whether they can pay or not, using athletics and sports as the conduit. Our intention is to provide camps, and to provide training, great athletic training, which implies that we'll have facilities starting here in Lynchburg, Virginia, but then other locations around the country. And then for those kids who are have the potential to do more and maybe can or can't afford a travel team, we will sponsor those teams as well. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're dropping these role model interviews every week, and we've got Twitter, KidFit Ministries, Instagram, and Facebook all there. Let's hop to the interview with Coach Trittipoe. Thanks again for joining. Okay, hey everyone, this is Carroll Moon with KidFit. I'm here with Rebekah Trittipoe from Liberty University Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Coach Trittipoe, thank you for meeting with me today.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
So I'll ask you the normal questions. We'll just start with the first one. Can you tell me about your running career?
Well, that's sort of a interesting story because I had always been an athlete in high school. I was multi-sport in high school, multi-sport in college. But my only running in those situations, 1975, my school finally got a track program, and I was a sprinter. And I could have gone to Villanova. I didn't. That's a whole other story. But I did not run in college because the college I went to didn't have a running program either for women. And like I said, this was in 1975, so things have really changed. So I played other sports. But I think it was 19 years later, after we had moved to Lynchburg, David Horton, who is sort of the ultra running guru, he said to me, "I bet you can't run 50 miles." And I go, "I bet I can." So that's when I started running the ultras. And ultra technically is anything over a marathon. So most of the races are 50K, 50 miles, 100K, 100 miles. I've done some like 7-day kind of stuff, running through the jungles and that kind of stuff. So it's been about 25 years since I've been doing the long stuff.
And you've written some books about the long stuff, right?
I have, yeah. There's, well, the first book was actually written about Horton. It's called Quest for Adventure because he had I guess, the record on the Appalachian Trail at one time. And then he had the third fastest time for running from LA to New York City.
Wow.
And so I wrote the book about that. And then I wrote another one about my race through the Amazon. That's called Under an Equatorial Sky. Then the next one was called Pace Yourself, and that's a 366 devotional because it was a leap year, so I had to write one extra day. And then Best Season Yet, 12 Weeks to Train, is a book with 60 sports-related stories that's meant to be a devotional kind of book for the individual athlete or for the team. And there's both a coaches and an athlete's edition of that.
That's awesome. And you've done a lot of coaching, and now you're in ministry. Can you tell me about that?
Well, that was sort of an odd set of circumstances as well, because 4 or 5 years ago I wouldn't have thought that I would be doing what I am. In like the minute kind of version, you know, when I left college, I started doing some bench chemistry stuff, then went back, got my education stuff, taught and coached for 3 years, then found out about cardiovascular perfusion, so I spent about 25 years, I did my training there at Ohio State, and then did about 25 years in cardiac surgery, and then I was teaching and coaching again, and one of the girls that I coached, her dad had been in FCA, and so he came to me and goes, "I think maybe you ought to consider FCA. Oh, by the way, it's a ministry." I'm going, why did you say that? But yeah, it was something that I really felt like, you know, when Mordecai told Esther, you know, regardless of the risk or consequences, you have got to go to the king and save your people. And I just really felt like all my life experiences had sort of brought me to the point where I was ready to do ministry. And so here I am, and I'm really happy to be where I am.
That's so great. Can you tell me about, so leading from the ministry and all that, can you tell me about why Jesus is so important to you?
Because without him, there really isn't anything. I think the thing that's been so impressive to me is when you read through Ephesians, and that, in and of ourselves, we were dead, absolutely dead as a doorknob. There's nothing that we could do to reconcile ourselves to God, and Christ has provided that bridge to the Father, and he's given us all the power. It says in Ephesians 2, I think it is, that this same power that rose Jesus from the grave is in you. And that's really pretty awesome to think about and understand positionally who we are. Before anything was created, God had said, I want you. And what a privilege, and it's very humbling. But when we understand who we are positionally, then the result should be that we live very intentionally. First Peter talks about that we have everything that we need to live a godly life. Ephesians 5, talks about be very careful then how you live. So you have to start off with understanding that we could do nothing. God chose us from the beginning of the world, but sin separated us from God. But he sent his son, the blood covered us, he made us white as snow, and he raised us up to a very fulfilled life, and he's given us all the tools to do that. So it's like, I love adventure. So this is like an adventure. How can I grow and be a more effective representative, I guess, of Christ through what's in his word?
Oh, that's great. It's great. And you're right. I'm the last guy that you would think would be doing these interviews. I'm so nervous one-on-one and always so excited to hear what you all are going to say. So that's fantastic. What about ultra running and athletics? Why are they so important to you?
Well, I used to, especially once I started running the long stuff, because a lot of people can't understand why you would pay money to enter a race and suffer. Running 50 miles through the mountains or 100 miles or whatever. And I used to say, I run because I can, but I don't anymore. I think it really, God wired me as an athlete, and I truly believe, 100% of me, every fiber in me, that was intentional. Athletics is so important in terms of teaching character traits, and those things that you learn in athletics, the discipline, the perseverance, all that kind of stuff, of course, leads very nicely into life as a whole. But I think the athletics has given me a platform that I wouldn't otherwise have. And like I said, God, he didn't make me a musician. He didn't make me an artist. He made me an athlete. So even in my 60s now, I still consider my athlete, and I still consider I've got that platform. I meet people on the top of a mountain that a lot of other people wouldn't be able to meet.
Right.
And so I just look at it as a real privilege to have that interest and capability be God-given, and then it becomes my responsibility to develop it.
And that's a perfect segue. The running's so important to you. You talked about why Jesus is so important to you. What about the combination of those two? What makes that combination special for you?
Here again, I think it comes back to the thing that Christ gives us purpose and focus. And if you take one without the other, it's not a complete picture. You have to marry the two before you get this perfect, I guess, picture of a life fulfilled in Christ and through Christ. Christ says that, through him and by him all things were made, and that includes us. So you really can't be all you can be, if you want to quote the Army, without being complete in Christ. And you combine athletics, and it's a powerful tool.
What about, like, what's been surprising to me about this interview series? We put it on YouTube, and they get some views, but the majority of views, I post them on LinkedIn too, and so there's all of these professionals that are watching them, and so that to me has been fascinating.
Wow.
So my question to you is what is your message to kids who will watch this on YouTube, and then their parents who maybe will watch it on YouTube or LinkedIn? What messages do you have for those two groups?
Well, a couple things. I'm a huge proponent of athletics. I think it can teach kids a multitude of things that are really, really important. But we need to keep perspective, because no matter if it's athletics or music or the arts or engineering, whatever, if that becomes our all in all, that will be detrimental, because we won't have the 30,000 foot view of what those things are intended for. So example, parents that just, from the time a kid is 4 years old, just boom, 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 and all this pressure and all this performance-based kind of stuff that's thrown at kids. It's no wonder that most kids are leaving, the statistics bear it out, by 12 or 13, kids leave sport. And if you look at the actual numbers, it's really quite astounding. And it's either because of burnout or because of just injury. But, I would say emphasize to your kids to be multi-sport kid. The kinesthetic sense that's developed, learn how to fly through the air, jump out of trees, make up games in the backyard, because sport is a game, and games are made to be enjoyed. And yes, we can pursue excellence. We need to pursue excellence. There's nothing that we should do with any lesser goal. But these are games, and we need to find joy in the discipline of it. We need to find joy in whether you're on a court or a field or whatever. So I think parents can help keep kids focused about why they're playing a sport by when you get in the car, you're not saying, oh man, you missed that tackle, or why did you drop that fly ball, or these kind of things, rather than saying, I love watching you play. I love watching you have fun, those are really important things. So should sports be in a kid's life? As far as I'm concerned, yes, if they happen to be, have that interest, but we need to make sure that we keep things in the proper perspective. What's a sport? And for a believing family, a believing kid, that sport, those talents that are given to us to develop, are only given to us for one purpose, and that's to reflect God's glory back to himself. So when it becomes about me, then we probably stepped over a line, because see, there's a very thin line, an infinitesimally thin line between obsession and dedication. We need to be dedicated, but if we cross that line into obsession, then things get all out of whack. And we can't see the world for what it is. We can't see our sport for what it is. And then we have some problems that come when we get to that point.
That is awesome. That line, the difference between obsession, that's fantastic. It's going to help a lot of parents. I bet it's helping me. I'm sitting here taking mental notes.
It's when I first started running the long stuff, I adapted very well physiologically. So I went from like 0 to nothing, boom, and the only thing I thought about was I lived, I ate, I breathed, ultra running. And I was a real student of the sport. I was a student of the physiology. I was a student of the training. And at that point, my kids were young. I was married. I was in a high pressure medical profession. And I was burning the candle at both ends. And I'll tell people, and in fact, even when I talk with the athletes here, it didn't ruin my marriage, but it certainly didn't help it, because I had crossed the line. I had lost perspective on what this running was doing, because I was at the front of the pack, and it was fun. I'm a very competitive kind of person, but I had crossed the line, and probably to the point, I'll admit, it was probably to the point of sin. So that line, I just leapt right over it. But it's funny, because sometimes it's an intentional jumping over the line. Sometimes it happens and you're not even aware that it happens. And I think that was my case.
And just kind of slide in.
Yeah. Because, if you want to get better, you got to work harder. I mean, just even think of the terminology that we as coaches, come on, you got to get to the grind. You got to work hard. And is hard work part of growing and developing as an athlete, and is it necessary? Absolutely. But when the only thing we can think about is, what more can I do, what more can I do, what more can I do? And the old adage, if it's raining outside, well, somewhere else someone is training harder than you are.
Ma'am.
That may be true, but what can I do realistically to get me to where I need to be? And then if it's more than that, just stop. And see, some people will interpret what I'm saying as saying, you don't care about being the best you can be, you don't care about excellence. That's not it at all. But we have to keep things in perspective. When a very important part of our lives goes down the tubes because the only thing we can do, or we're just plain too tired to deal with our families or our kids, then it's time to reevaluate.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. That was my last question. Thank you for taking the time,
Sure.
and God bless you and your ministry. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Wow. Isn't Coach Trittipoe awesome? I'm so grateful to her for taking the time to meet with me and to share her story with all of you. You can connect with Coach Trittipoe at libertyflamesfca.org or also at RebekahTrittipoe.blogspot.com. Thanks, and have a fantastic day, and please don't forget to subscribe.